I know there's going to be several that are going to be looking along. Some of you have PowerPoint as well, so I'll just put it on screen and camera both, where your PowerPoint will be seen and it'll be two different screens is what we have coming up.
Did you email the PowerPoint to yourself? Did you email the PowerPoint to yourself?
Any of you have thumb
That's how
drives
you
that
have
you're
to
going to be
view
using
the PowerPoint, is if you email
for
it
your
to yourself.
PowerPoint?
Or if it's on a thumb drive. Do you have a thumb
Oh,
drive?
okay.
I'm using a PowerPoint. What do I do?
All right, but
Do
you're
you
going
have
to
a
use
thumb
it
drive
with
with
put
a
a thumb
PowerPoint
drive
on
in
it?
the computer?
Do you email it to yourself?
I just have it on my computer.
Is your computer here?
Yeah.
So you can email it to yourself
you
and
have to
then
open it
sign
through
into
that.
your email over there.
So confused.
Did you do that, or do you have a thumb drive?
No, I just have it on my computer.
Yeah, you're on your computer.
I'm just trying to help you.
I'll just email it to myself.
Email
I
it
had
to
no
yourself.
idea what to do. I
You'll
know
need it.
it's like on a really unstable area.
All
I
right, what are we going to
scared
do?
you just a few minutes
I thought,
ago,
yeah,
too.
at first I thought we were gonna like all hook up our own computers to the thing. Because I was like, yeah, so I'd ask her.
And Kara also wasn't here last week, so she was confused by the media.
All right, confused. All right, we're here, and I need to give you all time. What I've handed out here in class, and for those that are online watching, you can open up that evaluation form and follow along to learn, give feedback. We're going to talk in the room here. I'm not asking anybody to turn in any sheet, and I'm not asking you all to turn in that sheet. Just use it as a check as we go through, as we're thinking about those three broad categories. You know, our organization, then the content, you know, meaning the style, and then our actual delivery, thinking of those broad areas. We're also looking at how we use media. Did I use it in a way that didn't look distracted and disjointed? Now, the downside is you haven't had an opportunity necessarily to practice on the mechanics here. Don't have a, no, we don't have a clicker for you to use PowerPoint. These are broken. Yep, they're both dead. So you've got to use the keyboard on the side if you're going to advance PowerPoint slides. Media, find it on, go ahead and set it up beforehand. Use the window that's here. Try not to close out your window when you get done. Anything else I need to say? Any questions? We're going to do talk 6, introduce talk 7 today. And go on from there. Let me do this in a word of prayer. That's pretty good. Father, thank you for just the beauty of the season. It's cold, but that's part of those seasons, and we just praise you for your grace to us. And think of so many around the country that are suffering physically. We pray for your body, your people, to be so gracious and just neighborly and just evidence the love of Christ to so many others, and us too, as we have those opportunities with our friends and family too. Lord, bless the students today as they present, those that have already presented, and we're going to see their videos and these here in class. We just want to continue to learn so that we communicate clearly, so that your message gets out, that's which we want to encourage other people about. For Christ's sake, I pray. Amen. Amen. Before the first person comes up, the education department, anybody? You were there, Bethany, right? The education department. Neat department chapel. It was over in the Sabre building where I have my office. And you were doing what? You were putting together kits for kids that are down at a hospital. They're in there for cancer treatment themselves. And so there's where a teacher can actually go in and teach a class. That's what I heard Dr. Briggs talking about. That neat opportunity for the education people to go in and help someone with a skill that we're learning here, how to communicate. Who'd like to be first? No volunteers? Jumping up. Want to come up and give it a try?
Yeah.
Yes, please, please, please. It's talk 6 to explain. Yes, when you're ready.
Okay. Hi, I will be talking on the cycle of misunderstanding between youth and adults and some ways that we can help that to not be the case in our society. So there's just this constant cycle of youth misunderstanding each other, misunderstanding themselves, the adults misunderstanding the youth, the adults feeling misunderstood by the youth, and it just keeps going and going and going. Well, that stems from the viewpoint that the adults and the youth have about how this world is, I guess. So adults live in the mindset that everything is the same, nothing changes. Everything that they went through, the youth of today are also going through. When that's not really the case. Adults lived in a time where, like, I don't know, like, work was earned in a very, like, strict manner, or they worked at very young ages. Technology wasn't as relevant to their everyday life, whereas, like, all of those things are continuing to advance in the lives of our youth today. So even though they see that the world is changing, they don't believe that it affects the lives of the youth, because they think that it's the same thing that they went through. They go off of their experiences alone rather than having an open mind. So if the youth come and talk to them about what they're experiencing, then they just approach it like, well, I went through this, so just handle it this way and you'll be fine, which can be helpful, but not when they are basing it solely off of, like, you have to do it the way that I did it. Or the other way around, which is a common thing that we see, especially with parents and their children, is like, okay, but if you do this, you're going to make the same mistakes I did. No, not necessarily. We're all different people. Yes, warn them of those things, but don't expect them to go down that same road, which they do often expect them to. And then on the other side, youth live in the mindset that nothing is the same, when that's not true either. Obviously, things are different, but there are aspects of life that have remained consistent, at least in some way, between the adult's time and their time. So it doesn't matter if the adult has gone through it, there's no way that they could understand how they're feeling. That's how they think. And that's why they oftentimes won't go to the adults for their issues, because they disregard the wisdom that they could gain from their experiences. They recognize that the adults' feelings and experiences are valid, but they just don't see it as relevant to them specifically. So what needs to happen is a balance between the two viewpoints. Yes, we all see things differently. We are all created as individuals. In my counseling class, it'll talk about how you can set a picture in front of a group of people, even if they're the same age, and they can see it in a different way. It can remind them of something different. When a youth sees a picture of woods or something, they could think, oh, peace, serenity, that's somewhere I can go to escape. Show it to another kid and they could think, oh, no, never take me to the woods. I am so scared that something could come attack me. So, like, we all have different viewpoints. Yes, various aspects of our world are the same. But the adults have had to experience that same sense of misunderstanding as the youth feel. And the youth will grow to be in the same, like, position of hindsight perspective as the adults. So that's what youth and adults need to understand, is youth need to look at it in a sense like, okay, they're older, maybe there's something that some insight that they can give me on how to handle this, even if they don't quite know exactly how I'm feeling. And the adults need to go back in time to when they were that age and try to remember how they felt when they were that person's age. Just all the confusion about their own identity, the insecurity of who they are and who others want them to be. All of those aspects have always been the same, because it's a part of the, like, developmental process of human life. So, youth feel as though they can relate to other youth or vice versa, even though they each have their own perspective or background or home environment or all of that. Like, youth will feel like they can relate to each other. So why is it they don't feel that way with adults? So they, they look at an adult and see someone much older than them and someone who couldn't possibly relate. If they take this perspective, the same one that they do for other youth, then that could change the relationship completely, because then they will better understand that they can relate to them, even if it's not in as specific of a way as they want it to be. So this has all been a really interesting part of my counseling class, so that's why I am able to talk about it so effectively, or at least I hope. On that table there, Kara, I'll have you go ahead and look at and pass around. These two books are where I've gotten most of this information. It's Hurt by Chap Clark and Engaging the Soul of Youth Culture by Walt Mueller. They are two very informative authors who speak on the relationship between the youth and the adults, obviously, because that's what I'm talking about. But yeah, as long as youth and adults both work together to be more open-minded of their own experiences and the experiences of the person that they're talking to, then they will be able to have a more effective relationship with each other that will hopefully gain in understanding and just the better perspectives of their living. So, thank you very much.
Cool. All right, let's ask some questions here. Why did you, let's start with your handout. Why did you hand them out as opposed to just show it up front?
So
what was
that
the choice going on in your mind?
if they wanted to be able to write it down,
Yeah.
or maybe after the talk they can look at it, and like kind of read the backs, read reviews that have been made on the books.
So you're talking to an audience here, you're using your college students here, who some of them are majoring in youth ministry, some of them are majoring in children's ministry. Maybe that would be a resource that you'd want to say that. Now, did she say that? Sometimes I'm sitting here writing and I miss what you said, and so I go, you never said it. No, I don't mean it that way. I just didn't hear it. Did you happen to say that? How we could look at it?
No, well, I said that you can look at, or
You can look
like.
at it. Tell us why we should look at it, what we could look for. Go ahead, Carl.
She kind of said like it was an example
Mm-hmm.
for like what she uses when she's looking at
Right.
it. So kind of like we could look at it in that perspective.
I mean, it's good thinking. Because your audience, you got people that may be going into ministry for different reasons there. Suggest a couple. Maybe you'd want to jot down. Who's the author of one of them? Who are the authors?
Chap Clark.
Champ.
and
Yeah,
Walt.
Champ Clark is a well-known youth worker type person that those who are in youth ministry would definitely want to keep that name out, whether you'd agree with everything theologically he believes
Yeah.
in, but he's a good guy.
So I guess that's another thing I could also just be like, make sure you use discretion speaking
Yep.
in regards of doctrine.
Yeah.
So that-
Use discernment is what I try to say,
Yeah.
because we're familiar with that term. Use discretion might mean, oh, he's got some R-rated stuff in there. Or,
Okay.
Watch your wording is all I think.
Yeah.
But we always want to use discretion, whatever we look at. Yeah, that is what I think of. Comments. If you want to think of organization, the content, or her style presentation, got a word of encouragement.
I think she definitely came well prepared and had it all formulated in a response that flowed really naturally.
Yeah.
So I really like her introduction.
What was her main point?
Her main
idea?
point is that adults and youth don't always get along because of their different viewpoints, and if they would just take the time to understand each other, it would work better.
All right, talk to explain, to take it further, or talk to inform. Adults and youth don't get along. we all sort of know that one, but you could help us to understand, because maybe some don't. Talk to explain why, and you use the word why in there. Why? So I'd want to hear in my main idea, and I've not looked at your outlines yet, so I'm not criticizing anything. I don't know what you've written there, but it'd say the reason why they have a difference is, you know, you'd say something along that line is your point. What was your main idea?
Just like, okay, so I wrote a title,
Mhm.
because this is a rough outline, so I still needed to like
Cool,
tweak
that's
it
all
a
right.
little bit.
Craft it through. Good. But your main idea was the difference.
The differences between.
It's not like a
youth-
causal analysis. This causes something.
Yeah.
or-
There's the difference between, or the misunderstanding between youth and adults lies within their, sorry, I'm just repeating what she said.
Yeah, that's all right.
Just
That's all
correct
right.
that.
But you hear what you did. Your main idea states a position. You're saying why. And that's what we want to do for a talk. When we're talking about the talk to persuade, we definitely want to take a position. You should. And now we're using the imperative. But in this case, you're using a strong indicative. This is the reason why.
Yeah.
Well, explain it to us, because I don't know if I totally agree with you.
Mhm.
Is what you're thinking about as you're going to talk together.
And that's what I tried to do. I don't know.
Yeah. You use a lot of examples. There were a couple times where you used it in the very beginning, and then I heard you later on, so my comment here isn't unfair, because I didn't hear the whole thing. I was just observing, and my wife does this to me. In a sermon, when I say, well, this is that. What do you mean this? What is this and what is that? I'm not
Oh.
definite enough. When you use an example, try to give a very specific example.
Okay.
Another point of clarification of clarity. Who are adults and who are youth? Who are you talking about? You're talking about parents and teens, or parents or adults and 5-year-olds? You know,
Okay.
it sounds like you're talking more like teenagers.
Yeah.
That gives us a little bit clearer thinking. Oh, you're talking about that tension, yeah, as opposed to the terrible twos type
Mhm.
tension, that we have with really young kids. So the more precise we can get with our examples is good. Good stuff. Who's next?
I can go.
Come on up. Come on up. I blank on name again. Tell me your first name.
Lily.
Lily. What's that?
Professor Dawes.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go make some copies of this while she gets set up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead. Down at the end of the hall, you just crank in the numbers. I think if I remember, it might take a few minutes to warm up.
Yeah.
Did someone else have a handout? Did you, Lily?
Yeah.
I
think
do,
we'll do
yes.
Is that what he's taking, or do we need to have a handout made for you?
No, I have mine. He's just making his own.
Are you going to use the handout in class though,
This?
to give it to
Yes.
everyone?
Sorry, I don't know what you're
You've got
asking.
copies though.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right, that's what you're saying.
I was a little
Excuse me.
confused.
That's okay. I'll make sure you have the opportunity to do the whole thing.
I'm still just trying to figure out when I need to word that I'm not a representative. Do I word it after my main idea? Do I?
So we know from the start.
But I have a hook, and so I feel like that would ruin my hook.
You say your hook in the
See,
same.
just I think you and I both struggle with this. Because we both like writing and literature and stuff like that. There is a difference between talking and writing a paper. Writing a paper, you want hooks and stuff like that. You want a hook with talking too, but it's kind of a different hook. Unless, do you have a PowerPoint?
No.
Okay. With PowerPoints, it's kind of like hooks are more acceptable because
I have
it's
a
written.
question.
Okay.
So when we
But-
do our talks, are we
Ooh,
supposed
I'm
to
excited.
like each
I almost
type
brought
of,
smoothies.
like a
Shut up! You totally.
And then I was like, I can't do it,
PowerPoint
so I
and
didn't.
and
Sorry,
hands out,
guys.
like in each one, or
But I was
just,
like, that's so much work.
Do you want us to use one of those?
Actually, it's not, but
I like the backgrounds you chose too.
Ask
Thank you.
specifically. Are you saying when I use a
I don't know if I should
PowerPoint,
wait for him
do
to
I
get
have to
back.
have the PowerPoint handout?
Probably.
yeah, I'll just
No. Can we do both in one?
Oh, yeah. You could.
Okay.
I mean, because there's 4 of them, there's going to be a talk. You've got to use a couple of them. And you can always use whatever appropriate for the time. You know, if you use a 3-minute video clip and a 6-minute sermon, talk, that's too much. But if you have a picture up there and just a little short 30-second clip, wow, in a 6-minute talk, that would work. All right, so you gotta take your time.
A nutritious breakfast or snack gives a good start to your day. Gives you energy to keep going all day long. In the spring and summer, people everywhere look for ways to blend nutrition and flavor together, and also to get relief from the scorching heat. Having smoothies with breakfast every day can surely pave the way for good health and enjoyment throughout the hot season. Not only will I discuss how to make a smoothie at home, but also the benefits of it. The first is that they're cheap. The upfront cost of a smoothie can be pretty expensive with all the bags of fruit, the juice, and the blender, but overall it will save you a bunch of money. I would say the cost of one smoothie made at home is probably around $1, but it depends on what you put in it and how expensive your ingredients are. Since smoothie cafes probably sell their smoothies for around $3 to $8, pretty much any smoothie you make at home will probably be less expensive. They're also nutritious. As we all know, fruit is very good for us, but a lot of us probably couldn't explain exactly why. So I will be specifically discussing some health benefits for making smoothies at home. At smoothie cafes, they add a lot of extra sugar and dyes, so it's better to know exactly what you're putting in your smoothie. My sister actually worked at a popular smoothie cafe, and she said that they add about a 1/4 cup of sugar for a smoothie like this big. Let's see. Next, smoothies are a great way to incorporate vegetables into your diet. Since the fruit and juice overtakes the flavor, you can add kind of gross vegetables like spinach and kale, and you won't barely be able to taste it. They also control cravings because they make you feel full. Many people often skip the morning meal and end up snacking on a bunch of food in between meals. To avoid this, experts advise having smoothies made of excellent fruits and flavors so they stay full for a long time. They also provide energy. Athletes found that smoothies increased their energy, decreased their recovery time, and also led to less aching and pain. For example, one athlete found that after running a 100-mile race, he recovered in 10 days instead of his usual month. So if you're an athlete, you will most likely benefit from incorporating smoothies into your diet, especially if you're not getting enough calories from fruits and vegetables. I'd probably recommend green smoothies or protein smoothies for you. They're also better for the environment. Smoothie cafes use styrofoam and plastic to serve their smoothies, so when you make them at home, you're most likely using all eco-friendly utensils like glass cups and metal spoons. And also, since you're not going to drive to go buy the smoothie, you're keeping the air a little bit cleaner and saving money on gas. And lastly, they're all really easy to make. There are only 6 steps to making them. And now that I have discussed the benefits, I'll finally start the smoothie making process. Step 1 is to get your supplies. The first thing you need is a blender. Like every product, if the price is low, like the price and quality go together, so if the price is low, the quality will probably be low as well. I wouldn't say you have to go get a $500 blender unless you want to, but a pretty good quality blender will probably be from like $40 to $80. Let's see. A cheaper blender that is pretty good is a brand called Ninja. These range from $40 to $80. This would be good for you if you only make smoothies like once in a while. But if you're a smoothie addict and you make smoothies all the time, I would recommend a really high quality brand called Vitamix. These are really expensive and can range from like $150 to $2,000. We have one of these, but we did not spend $2,000. We spent like $300. The second item you need is a liquid. Some common liquids for smoothies are citrus juice, like apple, orange, or grape. These can add sweetness to your smoothie and can change up the flavor of your recipes. You can also use lemonade and milk, and if you're dairy free, you can use like almond milk, oat milk, and coconut milk. Those are all good alternatives. And last liquid you can use is water. I will usually use about half water and half of another liquid, so I'm not getting as much as sugar and dairy, and I don't think it makes the flavor any less strong. The next supply you need is your fruit. When picking fruit, you usually want it to be frozen so you can have that nice thick consistency of smoothies. To get frozen fruit, you can either just buy it frozen, you can put it in the freezer beforehand, and if you don't have time to do any of those, you can just put ice in your smoothie. And when shopping for fruit, you probably want to keep in mind the most popular fruit used in smoothies, which are like strawberries, bananas, raspberries, and mango. And let's see, some fruit that's not usually used in smoothies are like apples, oranges, cherries, and grapes. If you really like any of those fruit, you can probably search up specific recipes that have these, or you can just throw them in because it'll probably taste good anyway. Let's see. The next supply you can get are just other common foods that go in smoothies, like yogurt, kale, the greens like kale, avocado, and spinach. And also you can add protein foods like protein powder, nuts and seeds, peanut butter, and I think that's all I had. And lastly, something optional to have are smoothie recipes, which I have here. Let me pass these out. Take my spread out.
Do we get to keep this?
Yes. So depending on your personality, you might want to follow these like recipes exact, or if you're like me, you just throw the stuff you have in your fridge together, and it tastes fine anyway. But yeah, if you're new to making smoothies, there are some recipes for you that you can use. After you get all your supplies, make sure you know how to use your blender. You need to read the instructions, obviously, so you can make the smoothie to prevent injury and prevent mess. Let's see here. Step 3 is to put your liquid in the blender. Keeping the liquids on the bottom can creates a vortex, easily pulling down all the food layered on the top. Also keep in mind that the amount of liquid you use will determine the consistency of your smoothie. Less liquid will make a thicker smoothie, and more liquid will make a thinner drink. And yeah, you can't really see this, but these are just the order that the food should probably go in to make the smoothie blend easily. Step 4, let's see, where am I? Is to put the fruits in the blender. It's pretty self-explanatory. I would just say cut up your fruits if your blender is less high quality. Step 5 is to add your add-ins like I talked about earlier, like spinach, yogurt, and the seeds. And the wonderful thing about smoothies is that you can literally add whatever you want and it'll taste good either way. It takes talent to make a bad smoothie. Let's see here. And the final step is to plug it in, put the top on, and blend. So smoothies have great nutrition, taste, they are low cost and easy to make. I encourage you to try these recipes at home for a healthier diet. Thank you.
I forgot with our first talk to ask if anybody had questions. Questions, anybody? Did she cover the process?
Is a peanut butter considered an add-in?
Yes, I would say so.
Can you make a hot
What
butter
happens
smoothie?
if you don't put the liquid in first?
It blends kind of the same, I think, but it takes longer, I would say. And, sorry, I'm trying to log out. It's just harder for it to blend. Yeah, that's all.
What's your favorite kind of smoothie?
Other questions? How'd she do?
Protein
Julie,
smoothies.
Julian was asking a
Oh,
question.
excuse me, go ahead.
I
Just
said,
ask
what's my
her.
favorite kind? I said, I love protein smoothies, and pretty much any kind. I like strawberry and mango a lot as well.
Have you ever
Which I
had
include.
ever had a smoothie just goes, no, I'm not going to do that again? You said you could throw anything in is what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
my sister, she had leftover, Dunkin' Donuts milk, and she put that in a smoothie,
Oh, cool.
and so that wasn't that good, but I still drink it.
All right. Any question? And I'm talking to the audience now. She gave us a handout. What do you think?
It could have been distracting. I was able to
Mhm.
realize that I needed to pay attention because she continued talking.
she
She did a
continued.
little bit of explaining as she was handing it out, but I feel like maybe it could have been better if she handed it out at the very end and referenced at that point. At the
Yeah.
end, I will give you recipe ideas or something like that.
That'd be good. And that
But-
she didn't talk about a lot. I was thinking another way she could have done that. You handed it out, said it, but then maybe point us out. Now notice it's strawberries, different different recipes you get, just to help us to see, oh, okay, and then we could set it aside. You know, because like what Bethany was saying, you really didn't need to have us look at it in detail. It was a take-home handout, which is good. Good stuff. You began with the title that said to me, process, how to make a smoothie, but then you began with material that was the benefits of it. So I'm sitting there thinking, technically, the how-to, that's the body of your outline. If you use that title, that expectation, there's a 5-step process for making your main idea for making a smoothie. The extra material, though, is that your point 1 and point 2? Okay, that's legitimate. There are excellent benefits and an easy process for making smoothies. All right, so you want to incorporate, making sure you're saying everything we're hearing, because you spent a little bit amount of time. It could have been just an introduction, but remember, introductions are short, just to orient us. Meaning, you know, you all have eaten smoothie. You remember there's a lot of benefits about it, and blah, 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 just real quick. But let me tell you how to make the process, because there's the meat of your talk. Again, I'm really down in the weeds picking, that are picky, but it helps us to think clearly what we're doing, and then allows us to focus the emphasis. Good use of PowerPoint. There's good contrast. Next, who's next?
Okay.
All right, ready? Who's gonna come up?
I guess we went last again.
Did you find it?
Yeah, it's loading.
Any pardon?
It's loading.
It's loading. That's good.
It says the page is unresponsive.
That's what you're looking at. It's trying to do something, but it's not doing it, is it? Now you're just trying to log in?
Yes.
Did you put in your password and it's now thinking about it? Is that what you
It
did?
hasn't let me try to put it in yet. I just put in my email.
Boy, it won't do that. Shut the window down maybe and try to start over. See what you want. Oh, there you go. What was that? What is it doing? Good?
Exit.
Yeah, just start over.
Oh. Okay.
There we go. Okay. Work? How many education majors? I know Bethany is. Anybody else know education? Are you following the debate about schools opening for the kids and everything? So, I'm just thinking of computers and the use of computers, because that's one of the biggest issues with kids at home. My wife substitute teaches in the Shawnee Mission District, and every once in a while she'll have an online class. She'll be called into the building, but then she sits there on a computer, and the kids log in, whatever system they're using. It's not Zoom, it's not Teams, and she'll see their faces, but then there just isn't much class time. I mean, she's a sub, so she doesn't teach. Yeah, she could proctor or tutor some of the classes that she teaches because of her background, but the students basically are just online for a few minutes and then they bye.
Well, it depends on what school you go to as well and how the school chooses to handle it, because all of my high school was a virtual academy. Like
It
the
was?
whole
Cool.
school was set
So
up
they
online.
had to set it up for that.
And they used a program where the teacher would log on, and we had 1 hour classes with each subject because it was high school, so I had a different teacher per subject. They had a PowerPoint slide, and we could hear them, and they could give us mic privileges, but if not, none of us had our video on, we couldn't hear each other, we could only listen to the teacher, and if they allowed us, we would have the chat open so we could have chat discussions.
Right.
And then we would have homework afterwards, and it was just formulated in a very easy to
Well,
work.
that's good.
I loved it.
That's great, because my wife's seeing, at least in the public schools that she's been in, it's just not that effective for the kids. It's- You wonder what they're doing the rest of the time. They didn't do it evidently.
Not getting it to work. So I'm gonna try another way.
Maybe if someone had a jump drive, something I don't think I do with me right now, we could plug it into her computer. She could download it to the jump
Yeah,
drive.
you could do that if you want to. Let me take that phone drive.
I'm just trying a different email.
Phone drive you could definitely use.
I find it very funny. I had a friend help me print this out, and she has a colored printer, and so the link is blue. It didn't need to be in color, but it was. Sweet.
Is that better? Here, it's a phone drive. Plug it in and load it onto that, just in the root directory will work. There it goes.
What do I do?
Ma'am?
How do I do it?
You probably don't need to open that up, just take your file, highlight it, and then this is what I do, right click.
This one?
Well, yeah, you gotta make sure you download it in the right place. But go ahead, click on it, see. Does it ask you where to download it?
I've never
Molly,
done
do you
this
have
before.
social
yeah,
media?
okay.
I do. I have Instagram and Snapchat.
Just highlight it.
What's your
Yeah.
Snapchat?
Yes. Okay.
No,
My
highlight the
Snapchat.
Oh, yeah, the file. There you go.
Yes, we can all add each other. It's
Pretty cool.
Limitless Lily.
Yeah, there you go.
I love that.
What is that?
Made it when I was like 13.
Says where to download. I don't know. I don't use those symbols. We all have 3 or 4
Yeah, it's kind of
different
funny
ways to
when
do
people
it.
have like my username's Princess Sparkles, like 20.
You can change it on
Oh yeah, you can
Hey,
change
Bethany,
Bethany,
do you know how to do it?
to download onto.
Don't.
yeah, take that her file and put it onto the thumb drive and just load it in there.
Oh, that one? Did you download it?
I downloaded it into the computer, I think.
I know, like I'll just.
What would it be called?
Yeah, that one.
Okay. And we're trying to get it onto Kingston. Is that what
Yes,
your USB
that's
is
it.
called?
That's mine.
Okay.
Just put it in the root directory and it'll work. You just find it right there in the root directory, load it up and do it.
Right there. Okay.
Where?
American Skate, correct?
Yes.
So then now I should be able to safely remove it. I'm not sure how it got in there, so I don't know how to remove
Just
this
pull it
thing.
straight out.
And then
Where do I put it?
There's
plug it
ports
in
down
down here.
underneath. There's 4 of them. They're just plugged into one of them. You know, do the same thing over
Yep,
on
to the back of
window.
here. Right there.
Thank you, Bethany.
Okay.
Hey, we're learning. Come on, that's part
Georgia,
of the
did you
process.
find Lily? Did you find Lily?
You got me on there.
Can you send her contact to me because it's not working for me?
how to turn it on?
Do I just click this?
No, not the red one. There's a circle of buttons in the center, and the bottom right outside that circle says AV mute.
Yep. So this one right here. I did. I'm very shocked.
Hey, there you go.
How do I open
We got it.
Go to slideshow. Technically, this is the hard way from beginning.
it? Now that I'm stressed out.
She's not stressed out too much anyway. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Good deep breath. Life separate.
Alright. What is American Skeet? American Skeet is a very competitive shotgun game. This game is typically played by 2 to 6 people. This game can be played solo, but is preferred to be played with other people. The object of the game is to shoot down as many clays as possible while you rotate through different positions. You might be wondering what a clay is. Clay is what the shooter will be shooting during the game. It is round, it is thin, it's an orange piece of clay. Oh my goodness, I'm on the wrong slide. Okay, sorry. It's round, it's thin, and it's orange. And it's about the palm, it's like the size of the palm of your hand. These clays will be flying through the air kind of fast, so you have to be fast as well to be able to shoot them down. But where do you shoot these clays? There are 8 stations that the shooters shoot from. The first 7 stations are spaced out equally around an arc of a cement circle. And the 8th station is between 1 and 7, which are located at each end of the arc in front of the high and low house. You might be wondering what a high and low house is. Oh my goodness, I need to go back. How do I go back? I'm so sorry.
The arrows? Yeah.
On the
back one?
keyboard.
No, not that one. Yeah, you just got to use the keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm so sorry, I've
No,
never
it's
used
all
this
right.
before.
You're learning.
Okay.
Would have had time before.
So, the high house makes the clays fly higher up and further out. The low house makes the clays fly lower and closer in. These clays that are flying come out at really weird times and really fast, which brings us to angles. Okay. The whole game of Skeet is all about having your gun pointed in the correct angle. If your gun isn't in the correct angle, you won't be able to hit any of the clays that come out of the high or low houses. Each angle is different from all stations. For the first station, you'll be pointing your gun higher up in the sky for the high house behind you, and down at the corner of the low house, which is where the clays will be coming out of. You can sort of see the high house in this picture on the side. So it's just like a small window, and it comes out of the high house, and the low house is just a shorter version, and it comes out of the small window there. Alright. Because it is a half circle, the shooters will be shooting like along the cement circle, so the gun's pointed direction will just follow along in the cement circle. So in the end, the shooter's gun will have made it like a complete half circle. With the shooter will be shooting a certain amount of clays at each station. The number of clays that will be shot in the games is 100. There will be 4 rounds, and each round will consist of 25 shots. With that, there will be different types of shots at each station. For station 1, the shooters will be their back will be facing the high house, and the front of them will be facing the low house. The first clay will be coming out from behind them over their head. And then the second clay will come out from in front of them from the low house window. And then both clays will come out at the same time. For the second station, this will be the exact same way. And for the 6th and 7th station, that will also be the same way. And for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th stations, you will only be shooting 2 clays. For the 3rd station, you will shoot the high house clay first,
and then the low house clay. And then when you make it to the fourth station, you will switch and you will shoot the low house first and then the high house. And it will continue like that around the rest of the circle. An important thing to remember is that from the first station to the fourth station, the clay will come out first with the high house clay, then the low house clay. Just remember that. Good news, when the shooter misses their first shot, they are given the option to shoot that one over again. So originally, there's only 24 shots, but because there's an extra shot in the box of shells, you get to shoot your first miss over again. Shooting American skeet seems to be very complicated and a little overwhelming at first, but once you get on the field and actually shoot it, it becomes much easier. Remember, there are only 8 stations, 2 houses, and a whole lot of angles in this game. But if you want to win, you can't miss because you only get one retry.
Cool. Thank you. All right, questions?
Can I play?
Did she explain? Do you do this yourself?
I do.
100 shots with a what gauge shotgun?
12.
12. How do you keep from having a sore shoulder by the end of the day?
I don't.
You don't.
I
You have a
normally
whole
have
shoulder.
like a purple bruise right here.
Yes,
It's a lot of fun.
imagine. It's a lot of fun. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing it since I was in 8th grade.
Cool. Wow.
Do you
That's
press
neat.
the red button?
No, I didn't.
Okay, good.
Questions? Observations. How did she do for explaining a process? 'Cause that's what it was.
Very organized.
Yeah. It's felt like a lot of details. I'm going, oh wow, am I supposed to take notes? This is where maybe a handout would help. When would you use this? Well, you're teaching a new class of shooters,
Yeah.
and it's going to seem overwhelming, but then you used a comment later. I thought it was great. It seems a little overwhelming. You used that word. Right? That's what I felt like. How am I going to get all this? And then you broke it down to a simple, good. Still don't get it, even though you said it sounds simple, but you encouraged us as an audience if we're going to be doing it. We're using it. So shoot, that's
I
good.
liked how
Good technique.
her conclusion was a summary, and
Mhm.
so she was able to like remind us what the main points were.
Mhm.
And her very last sentence was like, "Remember, you only get one retry." So that helps just reinforce.
How did
like,
you respond to that question, your statement? Because you had it in your PowerPoint, yeah, as one of the steps, but I only get one retry. What?
No, I think it's really wise that she reminds them of it because it becomes a skill that you have to get good enough at it that you shouldn't even need the one. But if you do need it, there is only one. So she's just reminding us in that one sentence that it is very technical and you have to get it down as best as you
yeah,
can.
cool. It's a skill. Notice the interplay that she used between what we saw, we heard. You know, we didn't see the steps, but you saw the pictures of them in different places. You know, maybe another schematic would have been an overhead where you see the stations, you see the towers. All right, that'd be another level of art. I've introduced this to you now. Now let's actually talk it through because you're going to walk out there here in a minute. I don't know what process you're thinking. But then you used hand gestures to help us sort of walk through. Again, it's so overwhelming. I've got to actually see it. Some of us can see things a little bit more easy visually, you know, where the placement is, but the interplay, what I'm saying is the interplay between what we do with our body while we're talking helps emphasize, even though the person might not get everything that's going on. Next. Let's do at least one more, and then we'll have, and Bethany will have to
Okay.
wait till after the break, if that'll be all right. Trevor.
I figured I'm tall enough to where I
Sure.
can use the computer.
Yep.
I have a handout. I'm going to have it face down in front of you, and I'll tell you when you should flip it over.
Will I get in trouble if I flip it over?
I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
Oh.
No.
Kira, you weren't here for his last presentation. He talked about how if you believed that people ride polar bears in Alaska, then you had to exit the room.
Wow.
Remember that one.
I believe that.
Well,
And American bears are nice.
So I'm continuing to talk about Alaska because why not? I know a lot about it,
You
and
know
it's
a lot
easy to
about
talk
it.
about. I promise this will be my last Alaska talk,
We'll see about that.
but no promises. So, my talk to explain is I'm going to be explaining the effect that COVID had on Alaska that most people do not know about. The Alaskan economy. Sorry. So to start, COVID had an immensely negative effect on a part of Alaska's economy, and a lot of people don't really know about it. And there's several reasons for that, and I want to explain what those are. So first of all, Alaska is very unique from most other states in how we make money. 85% of our revenue per year comes from oil. Okay, we have massive oil fields up north. It's called the North Slope. Every day there's a pipeline 800 miles long, and 490,000 barrels of oil flow through there per day. That's billions of dollars worth of it. And so of our $59 billion per year that we output for the nation, 85% of that comes from oil. And that was not affected by COVID too much because the people who actually crew that pipeline and run the oil fields is fairly small. You need to have very good skills to work up there, very specific skills. That's a job that can pay up to 45 or 50 bucks an hour starting pay with massive raises if you do well. But that means you have to be able to weld a pipeline, you have to be able to drive heavy machinery precisely. You also have to know how oil works. So that's a very, very specific skill set. And it's a very small percent of our population that works there. So COVID, when it came in, it did not really shut down our oil production. Things that do shut down our oil production are relations with other countries and global oil prices, which that was affected by COVID, but that's not unique to Alaska. So that's a separate issue, another talk for another time. Another big part of our economy is commercial fishing. For those of you who eat salmon from the market, if you're not eating trash from the Atlantic, you are eating Alaskan salmon from the Pacific. Never eat from the Atlantic. That's just free tip. You can have that one. Okay? Never eat Atlantic salmon. Trash. You want to eat Pacific salmon. And if you eat Pacific salmon in America, 99% of the time it's going to come from Bristol Bay, Alaska. Bristol Bay has been called the only sustainable salmon industry in the world because of how many billions of salmon come through there every year. It is estimated 6 billion pounds of seafood are taken from Bristol Bay annually. So that's a very big market. COVID had a little bit of an effect in how things are run and social distancing and testing, but really it didn't stop them because if you've met a commercial fisherman, you've met the toughest people on earth and they're not going to stop for a little virus. There are men out there well into their 80s who will work for 12 straight weeks hauling in hundreds of thousands of pounds in a boat. Their hands are so stiff that a lot of them can't really bend their fingers. And I think they would welcome death by virus than death out at sea. So they're not going to stop. So that leaves one more big part of our economy, and that is tourism. And now that took an immense hit from COVID. So tourism is our second largest source of revenue in the state. We have millions of visitors coming up to hunt, to fish, and to visit our national parks. 1.1 million visitors come up annually, and that's on a slow year. So that's the baseline that we've established for the decade is 1.1 million visitors annually. COVID hit in March. The tourist season really opens up in May. And so we had an entire month where we thought perhaps COVID, we'll have ways to cope with it. But as all of you know, things only got worse as that month went on, the month of April and into May. And things got shut down more and more to the point where we had no visitors at all. Now, if you would please flip over your handouts, I want you to pull out this page with all the charts and stuff. This is data from Southeast Alaska, where most of our cruise lines come from. Cruises are a huge part of tourism. That's actually where most tourists go, is by cruise. They'll start in Oregon or Washington, go up along the coast of Canada, end up in Southeast Alaska. and some continue on all the way to the West Coast. And so if you look here, these are estimates for 2020 that were put out in 2019. 2019 was a record-breaking year, and you can see here that they were going to break more records in 2020. 793 million in tourist spending, and that's not including on the tickets and prices to get there. That's just going town to town. That's that revenue is what's given to the locals who work there, and their jobs are tourism. So that is the profit for local businesses. 1.44 million cruise passengers. That's just the passengers that would come through Southeast Alaska on cruises. That's a lot of people for one summer. 606 cruise ship voyages. Now, that doesn't sound like that many, but these ships are pretty large. They fit a lot of people, and they do multiple trips in a summer. So to have 606 of them packed in one summer is busy. And then within Southeast alone, there will be 43 cruise ships. And then you can look down here. I apologize for not being in color. Our printers do not allow that on campus. But if you look down here, there is some data on the growth in percentage from year to year. And the projected for 2020 was all increase. Everybody thought 2020 would be the year. That meant that a lot of businesses, especially in Southeast, had spent money already to prepare for the season. They had bought supplies, they had taken on crews. Not cruise ships, crews of people to man the ships. And then everything got shut down within a matter of weeks, and they had to lay off thousands of people. If you'll look at the second page, there is a little article there. You can feel free to read that at the end. But if you look at the chart at the top, this shows the estimates for 2019 and 2020 of passengers, and you'll see that it's been growing. And so they had every reason to suspect that it would continue to grow, because the more people that come to Alaska, the more word of mouth advertising they have. When somebody comes back to, say, Kansas City, and they're like, guys, I went somewhere and the land wasn't flat and it was beautiful, everyone else in that area is going to go to where it's not flat and it's beautiful. So every year, the more people that go up, the more people are going to go up next year, because they tell their friends, and everyone wants to experience this part of the world. So COVID shutting down this industry, what did that mean for all the people in Alaska? Well, you've got villages that are entirely dependent on tourism to have an economy. My village, thankfully, has other ways of supporting ourselves. We have several air taxi services, so we provide transportation for locals. But there are 3 lodges. I work at one during the summer, but there are 3 lodges in my village, and they could not have any guests because of COVID. Near the end of the summer, the lodge I work at was able to come up at about a quarter capacity for guests, but they had to space them out, which isn't hard in a state with this much land, so few people. But we had to space them out in planes and how we got them around, and it was really tricky. We had to get creative. But there were thousands of people less fortunate than myself and others who could not work, because their whole job during the summer revolves around tourism. So you don't hear about as much, because Alaska was still outputting a fair amount of money compared to what we normally do because of the oil and the fishing. But our locals, they were impacted so negatively by COVID. There were tens of thousands of people that had no work. A lot of people became unemployed. Some had to rely on family back in the States, the lower 48 down here. They had to fly down here and stay with them because they couldn't support themselves in Alaska. This has not gotten a lot of coverage because everyone talks about Alaska as the countryside and as the nature, but they do not talk about Alaska as the people. And without the people, you cannot see Alaska for what it is, because you need experts, you need pilots, you need people who can ferry a boat to get you around. You can't come up there and just walk out and see everything. And so when our people are unable to do their jobs, everyone involved, the tourist companies, and the towns that they go through, all are hit economically. There is some good news, though, and that is Alaskans are resilient people. and we're also very creative. And we've come up with ways to alleviate some of the economic downfall from COVID. We've put together several stimulus packages aside from what the federal government has provided. Companies have come up with ways to meet COVID guidelines and still run their businesses, specifically restaurants and some sightseeing out of Anchorage. And people have also taken on more crew for their businesses than they normally would to accommodate the people that have been put out of a job. And it's really shown the strong community and bond that we have and the care that we show our neighbor. So while COVID did impact the tourist side of our state in a very big way, we are bouncing back, and we are planning on this summer to rebound and get our economy back to what it was before. So thank you. I hope that explains a little bit more about what happened.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. How do you do? Or questions? Did he explain everything? What questions did you have after?
I know he mentioned absolutely zero, and I don't think it's impossible, but I somehow still have a hard time believing that. So I would like to see, like, the actual 2020 statistics
Yeah, I thought that would
compared
help.
to the predicted 2020
Yeah.
statistics.
Yeah, you gave us this. That'd be where you'd want to do your research and, wow, where's the other chart that shows what actually happened?
There was not
Maybe you
enough-
didn't have that information available.
There was not enough data to make that
Yeah,
information,
right.
so they could not make a chart. I forgot to mention that.
It's
but
still so
I
new
did
into
do
21.
research, and there was so few people that came up that this was counted as zero because the revenue compared to the cost didn't
Right.
balance out.
Mhm.
So there was debt, there was no profit. So it's counted as zero. People came up.
Yeah, but your purpose was to explain causation, in a sense. So give us more evidence is really what she's saying. What could I use? Boy, that's where you want to see what you can and make sure it's accurate. So that people would say, oh yeah, you really did prove your point. You really did explain that. What you did, I want to highlight what you did use. This chart, it was a handout. You told us where to look at it. This is close to a chart. You didn't take us to the bottom. These are specific towns, but you did. My eyes went over here to the right to the change, and I was wondering, did this factor in 2020? No, it didn't. Didn't factor in the COVID numbers. But yet you took us to a place on a handout or on a chart. There's one of the media that I'm asking you to use is actually a chart of some form or a schematic or an object. Now maybe we want to come back and use an object where you're actually pointing to something I need to look at, either on the object that you're handing us. Had a guy come in with an AR-15 and he did it in class. Had Dr. Bittner's permission to bring it in with no ammo, but he pointed specific things on the AR-15 while he was holding it up there. And that's the same thing you do with a chart. Handouts, how does the person use it and when do they look at it? And then an object or a chart or a schematic, I actually point the audience to a specific place. So, good use. I saw you using both. Anything else that you saw? Let's take a 5-minute break and let Bethany come, and then we'll do as many as we can that are online. All right?
Good question. So,
Sir.
can I count this as either a chart or a handout?
I'm going to count them as both.
Oh, sweet.
I think you did good on both of them. It demonstrated what we need to show on that. All right, Bethany, you ready?
Oh
yeah, I guess
would
so.
love to see that.
Need to use the PowerPoint.
What?
Nothing.
I'm going to have a video, so I can pull up the video, and then when I play it, I'm just gonna go on break.
I think that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Is it?
Oh, you think I was supposed to be doing that right now?
Yes.
Well, I wasn't.
The video is it copyrighted, you're saying?
It's on YouTube, and so yes, I think
Yeah.
YouTube technically owns the right. Again,
Well, introduce it here and introduce it for everybody, and then you just gotta hit that break button.
is it on double right now?
It should be on this button up here when you're talking. So you have the screen and the camera, but then when you show the video, just hit the center bottom where it says break.
Correct.
And
But
then when
right
you get
now-
done, leave it on where it's
Right
at.
now it is showing the screen as well.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yay.
No, I'm not saying that. That's definitely why people
Yes. Okay. For a second, I was wondering if the correct video would pop up.
I mean, I don't like
All right, Bethany's up.
So I think I want it on just camera right now. So I pressed it.
Now, because
Because I'll go on break when I show the video, so they don't.
the camera will be just you. Then.
Correct. So first off, I just wanted to clarify, I am completely a third party. I'm not speaking on behalf of this organization in any way. It's just from my own observations. When I first say missionary, what is the first thing that comes to the top of your head? Many people will think of a pastor or some influential Christian in their life, and that is totally a missionary as well. Other people will think of people going to the tribes to spread the gospel there. And that is also missionaries. But there is so many people that are considered missionaries that are working a lot in the background that people don't see, that are definitely still essential to the work of the missionaries that are on the front line. You need all those people who are able to, a lot of examples I've been given is you need, in the military, you have the people who are driving planes and shooting the other people. But then you need mechanics who are able to take care of the planes, keep all of that up, to keep it going. And the similar process is true in missionary work as well. So you need aviation to be a backup to help the missionaries who are in the tribes. And so aviation is very important for the missionary work. They are effective because they are able to help bring the missionaries into the tribes in a lot shorter amount of time than it would take them to normally hike that. And they also don't have to lug around their baggage. They're able to just put that in the plane or the helicopter, and it can take 8 minutes instead of a good week or a few hours for them to hike up, depending on how far away it is. They're able to bring food and supplies, so the missionaries don't ever have to leave the village to get that. So they're just able to take that up to the villages. And they're able to be a medevac if a health emergency ever happens in the tribe for both the tribal people and the missionaries there, to help bring them to a city in the area that can better give the health needs of the people. So aviation is becoming more and more important for missionaries. Aviation also needs support as well, though. There are different branches of the aviation that are there to help keep the planes running. Again, it's more than just the pilots. You need mechanics who are able to keep the plane up to keep on running. You need people in the office work who are able to make sure everything is kept on tab and track and have a flight schedule to make sure that the plane's not supposed to be in two places at once or anything like that. And then we do have a program manager or a CEO that is able to oversee everything. They're like the boss, the manager of that specific area. Ethnos 360 Aviation specifically has a motto, millions unreached, none unreachable. This is specifically possible because of aviation, where we are able to go into very remote tribes where if you were to hike, it would be very unlikely, almost impossible to get in there. And we are switching even more to specifically helicopters, because with planes, though it's possible with our small planes, you need an airstrip. That could be, I think, like 200 yards or something, depending on the size of the plane. It's a lot easier with a helicopter because all you need is one square base for them to touch down at, and that's a lot easier than for a whole plane needing an airstrip. This is a very specific example for me because I was raised in a household where we were brought overseas to serve in these important roles as aviation. My dad went over there initially with the plan to become a mechanic. He was not a pilot yet, and so his goal was to just be there for mechanic. He was there for literally like a month, less than a month, and they already needed him to serve some of those office positions. And so he immediately jumped from the office position instead of him doing mechanic work. And so he was able to support the aviation, to let the aviation support the missionaries continually through that. As he grew in doing almost every single office position available except for the mechanics, he was then asked to be the CEO or the program manager for a short time being before we were actually called off the field. But he was able to serve that supporting role as well to support the missionaries that were out there. And so I'm going to show a video put out by Ethnos 360 that will specifically explain what they are doing and how aviation serves a big role. Okay.
That's good.
Right. So as that video demonstrated, aviation is very important to getting the missionaries into the tribe and just making sure they are there for any health or physical needs that they may have. And a 2-day hike can be shortened to just 8 minutes, and that saves a lot of time, so then the people in the tribes are able to be presented with the gospel much sooner. So that is why aviation is very important to missionaries.
Cool. Great. Questions? Did she explain it all or show the reasons why? Do you have any questions beyond that?
Did you say you would go with your dad?
I was an MK, so I grew up. My dad took our whole
Okay.
family along.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was your dad a pilot?
He's not a pilot now.
He was not, but he used missionary aviation.
He was in every single day. He would go to work at the hangar where the planes were kept. But he would go to work originally as the mechanic to make sure that the planes were all upkept.
So
and
he was
taken
in that
care of.
supportive role.
Right, he was in the supportive role of aviation, which is a supportive role of missionary.
All right, let me step further into what you're just asking there. Was this a talk to inform or a talk to explain?
My goal was to explain why aviation is important, but I'm not sure I did it the best way possible.
No, I'm not being picky. It might come across a little negative. Every talk builds on a foundation of understanding something. So we had to understand, yeah, that goes on, but now you're explaining. I heard you explaining, why do we really need to, here's what churches do. I got my pastor's hat on here. Why? They aren't a missionary. They aren't sharing the gospel. Why do I need to pay money for them? Well, the missionary won't get there. And the guy in the video said that clearly, and you did as well. So this is exactly what we just supported a couple at our church going to Irian-Jaya, probably the same place. If that was Irian-Jaya, is that where they were at?
That's Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea. All right, I remember exactly where they're going. They just got their shots. They're supposed to leave. Remember, they're getting their shots today. They're leaving in a week. He's a mechanic for the missionary aviation effort out there, and that's exactly what he was doing in his presentation, answering those questions. Why should we support you? The effort. So that's a legitimate, informative causal effect analysis. If they're not there, this is what the cause for us to be able to reach the gospel into that area. But here's the effect if they don't go. All right, so there's your thinking. And you're appealing. We're going to be talking about persuading. You haven't actually made the appeal. Would you support us? Like the Duns did when they came to our church. But you had to do that explanation beforehand, and then you make that appeal. Persuade us to persuade the congregation to support you. Go ahead.
So your church is supporting the Duns?
Yes, yeah. Linda.
I believe they are going to Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, all right, then I'm not clear of where everything is over there, but that's where he's going to support the missionary aviation.
Yeah, we're still, which I didn't mention, I should have. It could have been in my notes. But right now, my family is serving stateside, so we're even more the supportive role of the supportive role of the supportive role of aviation, which is supporting the missionaries, because of health reasons for my mom.
Oh.
But, yeah, so the Duns came down to Arizona to train before they were going to go overseas. And so I was able to, I think, babysit for a while with them,
Yeah, for
get
their
to know them,
little
so
daughter.
that was really cool.
Yeah. She's a cutie. Yeah, we're glad to send them off. And she's going over there to be a working with the missionary families as a counselor. She had a counseling degree here from Calvary.
It's really cool how God can use the wives, because a lot of times, I'm not saying it's not ever just the females who go alone, which does happen, but a lot of the times it's a family and the male is serving the role, and the female has her own skills that she's still able to use overseas.
Yeah, it's sad she should go as a mom, in one sense if they have a child, but if she's willing, the wife is willing. It's just like in the pastorate. Are you hiring two people when you hire a pastor? Meaning the wife and no, you aren't. Don't do that to our family. But most ministry families want to be involved. All right, there's two presentations here in Canvas I want to pick up first.
I think Jillian had something she wanted to say.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I just wanted
She's
to,
picking on you, evidently.
well, that's okay. I just wanted to give you an encouraging statement of, I liked how after the video was showing, since our online peers can't watch the video, I like how you took the main point of the video and stated it so that they were able to know what you showed.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause not all of us think to do that, and we want them to be just as much part of it, so I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
and good summary, thank you. That's one thing I had written down, I was gonna say, I forgot. You gotta set it up and remind us what we saw and put it in the context there. All right, this is Bailey Falconer. If I'm saying Bailey's last name, Bailey Falconer?
Yeah. I thought.
So let's see. You all can see that. I got her in mid-talk there. Come on, Bailey. Oh, sorry, I gotta stop you.
Yeah.
Make sure the sound's up.
She looks like she's in
Oh, I didn't need to do that. All right, we'll start over again, Bailey.
I've been sharing with you the conversation I had with my nephew last week. Last week, my nephew came home from Sunday school and told me about how they learned about ants. I said, ants?
Can
Is
you
your
all hear
volume
that?
still?
No, I can't hear it.
Is your volume up?
We're gonna stop that, Bailey. I have all the volumes up. There's another one.
Was my video really
Tyler's
loud?
very soft as well. Ma'am?
Was my video really loud?
It was good.
No,
It
the
was-
video, the volume is fine. I thought.
Decently loud.
Because I was standing right next to it, so I thought it was really loud.
Very
So if
loud.
that was loud, why could y'all not?
It's on her side because it also sounds a little muffled.
Mm.
So maybe, and the fact that her phone's slanted, I'm assuming she has it set up on the couch,
Probably. Or
which will muffle the
someplace.
microphone.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, let's try it. Let's try
We tried
Bailey,
putting on the
and
captions,
we're just
though.
gonna have to strain a little bit.
I've been sharing with you the conversation I had with my nephew last week.
Lily said try the caption.
My nephew
Ma'am?
came home from
Lily
Sunday
said
school.
try the captions.
Oh, no,
You can try to turn the captions
Closed
on.
captioning? The CC button at the
Oh,
bottom right.
yes.
Bottom. Yeah, bottom right.
Thank you. There you go. Let's back it up. Very good idea.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In my speech today, I'm going to be sharing with you the conversation I had with my nephew last week. Last week, my nephew came home from Sunday school and told me about how they learned about ants. I said, ants? Tell me about ants. What did you learn? He should tell you all the cool, interesting facts. And I told him, there's no way ants do that. They're not that cool. He goes, Aunt Lou, they're so cool. You have to look them up. So I thought, why not? I looked up, what is a life of an ant? I started to ask myself, I don't even know how ants are born. How are they born? Well, it starts with an egg. The queen lays eggs. The ant hatches from that egg and becomes a larva. The larva has no legs, just a soft white body with a small head. Like a worm, the baby ants are fed by the queen in the first generation. And the amount of food and the kind of food they are fed determines if they will become worker ants or a queen. Each larva grows and molts and eventually spins a small cocoon of silk. And inside the cocoon, it transforms into a pupa. The pupa is the resting stage. It doesn't move or eat. It just completes a transformation and into an adult. And emerges from the cocoon, you just right to work. So, now that we know how ants are born, how do ants reproduce? The queen will only mate once in her life, but she will continue to lay eggs until she dies. So this raised the question, okay, queens only live for what, a month? There's no way, she only mates once. She doesn't get pregnant, right? The queen will lay thousands of eggs. Queens live up to 15 years. 15 years. I would lose from cells. but it's true. And I thought, well, how long do the workers live? The workers may live up to a year, some will live to a few months. The male dies as soon as they mate with the queen, so they only live for about a few weeks. Sometimes a nest has several queens, and they can keep a large colony there for years. Once the colony is big enough, and the queens will fight to the death, like all of you one queen at the end of the day. So, this raises another question. How do ants communicate? If they're creating large colonies and they're creating these empires, how do they communicate? Ants can't see very well. They can see, but not very well. They communicate with scent and touch. And they have these complicated chemical signals that allow them to work together to achieve different tasks. They often spread information by touching each other's antennas or heads. Some ants also make noises by rubbing their legs against their body. So they communicate. They're intelligent little insects. I started thinking, how do they avoid their enemies? Worker ants attack predators. They will not back down from the fight. They'll do whatever it takes to protect their nest. Some ant species can sting, not all of them though. They'll even attack large animals. You know, it doesn't hurt them, but they will attack. They're not cowards. And their enemies are bears, birds, spiders, and other ants. So now that we've learned a whole bunch about ants and their day-to-day life, what are some fun facts about ants? I remember learning that in 2nd grade, ants have super strength. They have the ability to carry 10 to 50 times their own body weight. That would be the same as a 7-year-old lifting a car above his or her head. Ants don't have lungs. Their bodies are too small, so they breathe through their skin where our ribs are. That's where they breathe. Ants can swim well. Not all ants can swim. It depends on the species. They haven't mastered the butterfly or the backstroke yet. They're very intelligent little bugs. But they do have the ability to survive in water, and they have their own version of the doggy paddle. And they can also float around for time. Ants also build their own bathrooms in their nest, furthest away from their food. Ants are very OCD, so they don't like their bathroom close to the kitchen, as she was saying. So, in conclusion, the reason I was talking about ants is they're fun. They were extremely fun to look up and find out a whole bunch of fun facts. But in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This made me think. We look at ants as these tiny little insects. They're just these normal little bugs that come into your room when you leave for food. But I started to think, when people say there's no God out there, you could do something as simple as ants. How is there no God when ants are so detailed and they're so intelligent? You're telling me there's no God out there that created this? It is crazy what ants can do. Yet there was nothing for God to create them. So I hope you learned some interesting facts like I had about ants. And
Uh-oh.
Cancel.
Stopped.
Cancel.
Pardon?
It canceled.
Cancel.
It canceled.
Cancel.
In the center.
Where am I supposed to hit
Just
cancel?
pause.
You know how there's that circle in the
Yeah.
very middle that goes like this? When it goes like this, it's loading the next thing.
Right,
so
it
if you
is.
press cancel
Right below it.
Right in the
says
center?
cancel in the middle.
I don't see that. I just try to close the window if I can here.
Because
Yeah.
even though you close out of it, it's still loading. the
It's
next
still
one.
loading
so
up
if
the
you
next
press
video.
Cancel, then
Cool. All right. Well, Bailey, what questions you have for her? She gave an explanation. Or is there anything that you were missing from it?
I feel kind of really critical today.
Uh-oh.
It's not good. I don't want to point
So we
out.
should go to somebody else. No. What do you say? What
Was,
would
was
help her
this a
out? How
tough
about
to explain? Was she explaining like the how of the ant? I felt like it was just more informing, and I know
Yeah,
we've
it was a
talked
lot of
about how it is
information.
really close.
She had different parts of her talk that were explanations, and I wish she would have taken a little bit more in depth with those. Maybe because of the time, you're limited. So it sounds like, Bailey, to do a talk to explain, you needed to expand that explanation. I heard at the beginning a title, maybe this wasn't the title, How Ants Are Born. That's a process. How are they born? Why is it that way? And especially the way you ended, Bailey, with God's perspective toward everything has purpose. Wow. Take more time with that and show us some pictures. That's where pictures really would have helped with the video, or maybe a little video clip that illustrates exactly what you're saying there. So what I think Bethany's saying is that though every talk has to be built off of understanding, to do a specific explanation, why is it that way? How does it happen? You need to spend a little bit more time with that element of the talk, I think is what you're saying. That's what I was feeling too. It was more of a talk to inform at one point. But you had some good steps toward a process analysis is what I wrote down at the beginning. Lots of good details, all appropriate for that. Anything else? She had good eye contact. We have the advantage here in the classroom that you didn't have, Bailey, out of our peripheral vision to see our monitor of what's on the screen. If you're ever having to do what Bailey did where you're having to look back, she had to do that to make sure she was on the right, your mind's racing, am I on the right slide? So she looked back, but then she came back with eye contact. And you just got to play with that. It's a hassle when you get on the wrong slide and you're trying to talk and you're trying to think, how do I get back to where, in fact, Carrie, you were, no, that'll happen to us. Either you're not used to the clicker and it goes too far, or it doesn't go while your mind's racing. All right, thank you, Bailey, good. Let's go to my thumb drive. We have several on there. Tyla's real soft. I'm going to try to get Tyla, and we won't be able to get everybody. Well, yeah, we'll see how many we can get here. Come on, where'd it go? Now help me out, everybody. Can you do closed captioning with this?
Trying a dog
Doesn't look like it.
I don't think so.
Why were we able to do it with
What was
Bailey?
that comment?
That was on YouTube, so I don't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, this might be a little too soft for us, is what I heard earlier, but Tyler, we're going to listen to it. Tyler Ewing.
hard and long process. But the proper education and gear, this process can be made a lot easier. Training a dog really isn't that hard if you learn the proper techniques. So the most basic and important techniques to teach a dog is the sit, stay, and heel. These not only aid in future training, but they can also help in keeping your dog safe in out-of-practice situations. So today I'm going to try and explain how to teach dogs these basic commands. Alright, so first thing I'm going to try and explain is how to teach a dog to sit.
Can you all hear?
No,
Not.
I can't hear her at all.
Trevor, can you hear?
I feel like
Can you all hear in the front?
I can hear okay-ish.
I'm
Yeah,
only
this-
able to hear her because
Well, I'm
I'm
also
good
right
at
next to this thing, so.
Yeah.
As I run next
Honestly,
to this
Julian,
thing, so
that
it's not very
probably
helpful.
explains
It's
why I
blowing
can
my
hear.
ear.
Yeah, right. That's the same. I got the camera up here on my side. It's hard to hear. That's nothing to do with you, Tyler. It's just the recording got a little soft. Let's try it. See what we can get out of it, because she has a good topic.
Remember that when you're taught to take it slow. Dogs, especially puppies, have a limited amount of attention span and easily get distracted, as I'm sure you know. Keep this in mind during the training process and know that you have to keep it slow at first. Give your dogs plenty of breaks to allow him to fully focus during the sessions. You want to select an appropriate environment. This training environment should be an area the dog is comfortable with and relatively free from distractions. Hi everybody, this is Toby. He is about a 9-month-old puppy that we got a few months ago. He is still young, so we need lots of training, but I think he'd be perfect to show you these basic commands. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is capture your dog's attention. Treats work really well in doing that. So once you get your dog's attention, you'll show him that you have the treat. Then what you'll do is you'll have the treat and you'll set it by his nose, and as you have it by his nose, he'll hopefully sit down trying to get the treat. I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so come here. Come here. Good boy. Alright. Now sit. Good boy. Well, like that, he tried to follow the treat, and as he was following the treat, he sat down. Good boy, Toby. Good sit. And as he's sitting, you want to say, good sit, because they don't know what it is unless you say the word associated with it. So, alright, Toby, come here. Good boy. Alright, sit. Good boy, Toby. Good sit. And you always reward your dog with good behavior. So after a while, he'll get used to the word sit and he'll start sitting on command. What I do, especially with young dogs, is always use your hand signal. I do this for sit. That way they have the verbal and visual cues of what to do. The second thing I'm going to explain to you is how I train a dog to stay. Now this one's a little bit more complicated. It helps if they learn to sit before they learn to stay. So what you'll have your dog do is have him on a leash. It makes this process a whole lot easier. And you'll have him sit just a little bit with the foot in front of you. Then you'll tell him to stay and use your hand in front of his nose like this, and he'll stay in a sitting position. Keep him there and keep saying stay and back up slowly. If he gets up, then start the process over again. If he stays, say good stay, Toby, good stay, and keep that up. So I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so as you can see, we have Toby on a leash. So the first thing I'm going to ask him to do is to sit. Alright, Toby, sit. Good boy. Alright, and now I'm going to hold my hand out like this and say, Toby, stay. 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 Good boy, Toby. And then you can reward him. Now, if he was to get up as I was doing that, I tell him to sit back down and repeat the process until he stays, and then I can tell him it's good to go. And the more you practice stay, the more you'll be able to back up more and more and more and have your dog stay at a longer distance. Alright, and the third thing I'm going to try to explain is how to teach a dog to hill. This process is a lot harder, so you'll need to make sure that you know the techniques well, because it's pretty hard to do. When I first got Toby, he would literally drag me on every single walk. He would pull, he would drag, and it felt like he was walking me and me walking him. So I'm going to try to explain to you how to teach a dog to hill. This leash we got online, it's pretty cool, and it's really helpful when training Toby. So the first thing you do is you clip the leash onto his collar. Then after that, you'll slide this little loop through the chain loop here. And then as this is hooked to his collar, this will slip around his neck. And it's better if I show you on the dog. Alright, come here, Toby. Good boy. Alright, Toby, sit. Good boy. Alright, so this is on his collar here. Well, that's what's on his collar. This will slip around his neck like so. And this gives you better control over the dog and helps him with hill. And then if you flip his collar around so that it flips in the back, what you do is you put a little bit of slack on the rope, like so. And then loop it around and just go around his mouth. Now, this might seem kind of weird, but this is a hound, so he likes sniffing a lot. So this helps keep his nose off the ground, and it keeps him walking instead of stopping and dragging him everywhere. So I have a lot more control of Toby. He's like 80 pounds. When I'm holding him with this leash, and it has control over his muzzle to help him from sniffing everywhere. So sometimes using the proper gear helps a lot. Some people use choke collars, some people use muzzles, harnesses. This leash I have found to work the best for Toby at least. So you kind of have to experiment and see what works best with your dog. So once you get your dog on the leash, what I do is I always use treats. Treats work a lot, especially with dogs who like them. So alright, Toby, come here. Alright, what I have him do is he's always on my left side. It helps if you keep a habit in routine. So he's on the left side, come here. I have him sit next to me, and I say, Toby, till. Till. Good boy, good milk's gonna be good boy, good milk. And just like that, they teach your dog how to milk. Hold the treat next to you, don't let him grab the treat out of your hand now, and just have him follow you. And if you say the word hill, then he'll get used to knowing hill with their eye or leg while you're watching. Alright, Toby, hill. Good boy, good. And there you go. Practice makes perfect, so sometimes it takes a lot of practice, but after a while, they should get the hang of it, and then move off when they're hill. So training Toby is still a little bit rough, as you can probably see. He's still a puppy, so it takes lots of practice still. But training your dog with the proper techniques and equipment makes for a lot simpler and effective progress. Hopefully, these training explanations can help you better train a dog in the future. These simple commands not only advance your dog in the training process, but also helps keep him out of danger. Thank you for listening and for sticking with me and Toby during our training progress.
Very good. Thank you. Glad we hung in there. Questions? Oh. Did she explain everything?
She explained everything of those 3 tricks, yes.
Yeah, it was clear. Maybe there'd be a lot more questions. Well, what about this and what about that? But at least it got us going on all those basic moves.
Did she? No, she showed the brand of treats that she used. She could have recommended
Yeah.
Specifically recommended it.
If
just
that was a recommendation she could have used, or
yeah, but
maybe she
she
didn't
did
want to
a-
highlight a brand name,
maybe
Yeah.
she did a really good job though.
Yes, really.
Especially with the edits with the.
Yes, having those the PowerPoint slides where it had the titles.
Uh-huh.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And then having the correction. I
Yeah,
saw at the
that-
beginning everything's backwards on her shirt. It didn't spell correctly, and then she clarified when she was doing a maneuver where she was saying he's on my right, but really, and I
Looks
don't
like the
remember
left.
what the side was. She was trying to clarify why
Yeah.
we're seeing the opposite of what she just had said. Good example. She touched on. Did you hear where she said why you have to do it the way she said you should do it? Sometimes we do an explanation. We need to think through what the audience might not be getting, or what they need to get. She said there's a reason you do. What was it? So he won't sniff. Remember when she put the leash around his nose? Why she was doing it that way? Why don't you just put it around his neck? Just choke him. Well, don't want to choke him. No, it was more than that. It was so she could pull his nose up. An 80-pound dog to keep his nose off the ground so he's not distracted. Okay, that's what an explanation needs to do. Why you do the steps in the order that you do them, and you do.
I
So,
also thought
excellent.
this speech was really interesting for her because she mentioned that her dog was still in training, and it would be a little bit more difficult for her to demonstrate the process if this dog had already been through it so much that it would automatically obey every
She
single
had to
thing
use a
said.
good subject, didn't she?
Yes.
Yes, it helped. If it were somebody that weren't used to it, it'd be too much time wasted with, all right, get up. Oh, well, this dog isn't trained yet, if that's
Or
what you're
if she
talking about.
had a dog that was so trained that, I thought the
Oh.
dog was clearly still learning. It would mostly obey, but she had a few issues, and so was a good example versus a dog that would literally do what you tell it to every single time.
What about her use of the objects? She had several objects. She had the dog, she had the leash. The dog was the primary one. She had the treat that she was using. Did she use them all? What do you think?
Yeah.
Why?
Is it very that's the best way to make it to where we know exactly how to.
Think of how many places in life we're going to do something like this where we have a crowd around with us with the actual object. You're teaching dog training, and you have all these people that are around the room with their little dog trying to corral them. You need to do it clearly, make sure it's easy for them to start out with. The time for the video, there was one time where she focused, and it was with the leash, where she was talking away, but mostly, and that was, she had to get it around him. She was talking us through how to do that, but then she did turn back. So you want to make sure your voice is coming out and not buried, especially if you have a group of people standing around you trying to see your demonstration. You've already talked about it, now you're actually demonstrating it.
And she did a
Good
really
example.
She did a really good job explaining the process, and then was like, "Now let me show you." So she
Yes.
told us what she was gonna do first.
Yep. Seth, I think will come right up. Maybe it won't.
It should.
Oh no, it's on my thumb drive. That's what it is. It's gonna load it down.
Why is he not here?
Seth's at a basketball game. You went out.
Faith is something everyone has. You know, we have faith that cheers with.
Is that too loud for y'all? It sounds too loud.
Yeah, slightly.
Maybe I'll just adjust over here. Because it sounds ringy, raspy. He's got a good clear voice. All right, Seth, do it again here for us. We missed your topic.
Faith is something everyone has. You know, we have faith that chairs will hold us up when we go to sit down in them. Faith that the food we just ate at lunch is not poisoned. But the thing is, as Christians, we also have to have faith in God, the Bible, and Jesus' death and resurrection. Having faith is easy when life is all blue skies and sunshine, but it can get very hard to have good, strong faith when things get tough, and they will. The crazy part is, our faith and maturity as well can grow in the midst of these tough times. Tough times may challenge us in many ways, but they can bring stronger faith and greater maturity when we go through them the right way. I have personally seen both of these things happen through tough times. The first part was when I saw my faith grow through hard times because I dealt with it well. When I lost my dad in just April of 2019, it rocked my world. I lost the person who taught me everything I know, and he brought me up to live the Christian life and to walk the Christian walk. And then all of a sudden, in the midst of a day when I was so busy and I took everything for granted, he was gone from cancer. And losing him really rocked my world, and it was a very tough time. The thing is, my faith grew because of that tough time. I didn't look to what happened and ask God, why did this happen to me? I did, but I did it in the right way. I wasn't accusing God of something he didn't do. I wasn't accusing God of taking everything away from me, because I found my worth in Christ and in God. I asked God why, but it was to understand him more. It wasn't to accuse him. It was to understand him more. And I personally just really had to focus on putting my trust in God's plan. And so my object here I brought with me is, this was my dad's Bible. I have put this cover on, but underneath it's still the same Bible. And I cling to this Bible very much because there are multiple things within it that my dad wrote, my dad underlined. And for instance, one of those things is my dad in 2 Corinthians, I believe, underlined a verse and put, "There's a purpose for my pain." I still cling to that to this day because it helped me grow my faith, because it made me remember there's a purpose for my pain. There's a purpose for why God is putting me through this, and it is to make me become more like him. Realizing that can grow your faith. On the flip side, say I had begun asking God, why did you do this to me? Why did you take everything away from me? And that bitterness grew up inside of me, and I never talked about it, and I never talked to anyone about the experience I was going through. If I just built up everything inside of me and worked on it by myself, not trusting anyone, not looking into my Bible, my faith would not have grown, because I would not be trusting in God's plan. I would have been trying to figure out why now and in that time God took away my dad. But instead of that, I looked to the future and looked at what God is doing through this and for me through this time, and it helped me grow my faith. Another way that my faith grew through this was just having hope. The hope that I was going to get to see my dad for an eternity after death, after I died, or I just raised up to be with Christ, because we don't know when he's coming back. But having that hope grew my faith, because it wasn't all about stuck in the time I was at. I was looking forward to what I had in store for me, because of I know where I'm going, and because of, thank the Lord, he sent his son to save me. Along with faith, maturity can grow through hard times. I grew in maturity when I had to take on more responsibility in my house when he passed away. I had to help pay for things like pay the house payment when my mom was short a few dollars this month, or when we had to go get groceries but my mom had just paid off the house payment. She would turn to me and I had to pick up that responsibility. Whether you know it or not, taking on this responsibility grows your maturity so much. It's astounding to me where I had come from within my junior year, the end of my junior year to my senior year when my dad passed away, just the maturity I saw myself get. And I heard from very many people that my maturity had grown, and I had maturity beyond my years because of the experience I just went through. And again, it was because I had to take on responsibility. Another way my maturity grew is I just had to be there for my mom when she needed someone. When she needed someone to talk to after a tough day at work, after dealing with my grandma, who is a lot to handle. My mom would come to me because she didn't have anyone else to go to. She didn't have anywhere else to turn. And she would just talk to me. But at the end she'd say, Seth, you have to promise me you can't tell anyone about this. My maturity had to grow because as a younger kid, you want to tell everybody everything. I had to step up and keep it to myself because she was struggling with things. Maturity does not normally decrease through these tough times, though. Even an unbeliever seems to grow in maturity when dealing with tough times. Just because we're Christian and they're not doesn't mean we'll grow in maturity and they won't. Because I've seen in other people's lives who aren't believers that when they go through a tough time, it changes them and it grows them as a person. It makes them more mature. And so normally we see maturity grow. I'm sure there are small circumstances where maturity does decrease in the time of a struggle, but most often it grows through tough times. Now, life will get hard for us at some point, and if you have not experienced any hardships, praise the Lord because you have had a great life, but they will come. It is promised that tough times will come. In these tough times, it's crucial to remember that if we handle the storm in the right way, our faith in maturity can grow enormously. I hope my story helps you to take the challenge head on and in the correct way, and it helps you grow your faith and maturity through the storm you may about to be coming into, you're in right now, or it's way down the line. Another thing to remember is God will always walk with a person when they go through a struggle. God will walk with you. He never leaves us. We just have to trust in Him and in His plan and hold tight to Him. Thank you.
Hey, that's great. All right, we'll stop right there. Freeze Seth there. All right, good job. Question. Did you hear a process, or what was that? A causal? Was that an effect? Was that a...
Yeah, because he was explaining how you can use hardship, or how God can use hardship in.
What was his topic? Let's take a step beyond that. What was his main idea? What do you think? Was it clear? Now, I was writing something at the beginning. I heard him go in one direction, I thought, but maybe I missed something that he said. So help me what you heard.
Felt like his focus was on faith, but then it turned into his focus being on what he learned from his experience.
Well,
where
it's
did
what
maturity
faith
factor into that? Because he emphasized maturity a lot there.
You gonna say something, Joey?
Yeah, but I can't really grasp it. So go ahead.
Yeah, I heard it clear. I heard at the beginning. We're just trying to analyze. Am I communicating clearly to my audience what the topic is, my purpose, and that usually comes at the beginning. What you start out. I heard, like what Bethany just said there, Seth, that as you got the talk going, I wrote out in parenthesis how to. I was struggling. How to grow through trials, through tough times, because you used that wording. And then I hear faith and maturity fitting in to that. So perhaps what we're saying, Seth, needed to make the topic clear. We all go through tough times. I went through a tough time when my dad died. That was obvious at the beginning. That was your example. But then when I get to the end of it, then I saw how what you were going to say about it. What is the process that went on that helps us, or what will cause us to stay strong through tough times is really what you're going for. So that would have helped us a little bit, but it was clear. The object, he used the Bible. How could you use an object, but he didn't open it up, he said that he read something that was inside it. And we can't see that, so it's appropriate that he just reminded us of what he saw. Is that a use of an object? What do you think? Why and how?
I would say it is.
In what sense?
Because it other than the fact that it is an object.
But it's a familiar object.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
we all have, or
Yeah.
we all can have access to a Bible along, or just any sentimental thing that important people in our life could have done that same sort of
Things that people have said. Some people have in their Bible written things, and they pass on to another family member, and we read what they wrote. And that's what Seth was saying there. By bringing the Bible out, pulling it out from the lectern or bringing it up, I brought my dad's Bible up here. That's a reminder to me. Yes, he could have said, didn't need to. Yes, he could have said, maybe you have something like that in your life, or somebody's communicated something to you. Or God's wanting to communicate, what that image says, here's God communicating to us truths that we need to come back to. That's what I heard, a grounding for all of us. If it's a very familiar object, that we would have our own context for it, but yet it's a context we all would go to, in our audience. Cool, that was good. Then leave Dad's Bible there. That's a reminder for you, and I've got something else maybe that you don't know anything about, but like we were saying, Jolene, that would remind us. So a good use of an object there. Let's do one more. Eliana is in here as well, in Canvas, and then we'll take another quick break. Go on, get out of the way. Bless you. She's in YouTube. We'll get it stopped. The pitfalls of technological immersion. All right, so we have a good topic. We're very clear on that one. All right, here you go, Eliana. Let's listen to your talk.
In 1962, public schools prohibited students from reading the Bible in private school. From then until the present, morals in the U.S. have diminished. While several
I'm going to stop it. Closed caption? All right, I'm going to have to do it while it's stopped. Go
other
ahead.
factors influence the moral decline, one major factor rests in the hands of Hollywood. Visible declines of morality in television have led to a immoral society. And the kids' show Kickin' It is one example of this decline. One specific episode, the episode begins by correcting a character who lies all the time. So there's Jerry and Milton. Jerry lies all the time, and Milton confronts his friend and is like, hey, it's not good to lie. It's wrong to lie. And so he helps Jerry correct this issue. So now Jerry tells the truth. The problem is he tells the truth brutally. So he hurts a lot of other people's feelings. And so Milton confronts him again. He's like, hey, this is wrong. You can't do this. But he says it in a wrong way. Milton kind of concludes that it's okay to lie if the truth is going to hurt someone. And the Bible clearly is against that. In fact, in Proverbs, a lying tongue is the second thing mentioned out of the 7 things that God hates in Proverbs. Okay, so the Marvel movie Age of Ultron is another example of a moral decline. In Age of Ultron, you can see the main villain here, Ultron, who is an artificial intelligence. He said a lot of fishy stuff, and he mocked God throughout this entire movie. In fact, he blasphemed God pretty much. He claimed to be God. And here's some stuff that he said. He said, I've come to save the world.
He also said, he made a reference to Noah and the flood, and referring to himself, he was using it as an illustration that he was going to essentially destroy the world and purge it of imperfections, because, he was kind of using it almost as a parallel of imperfections to sin, but obviously those are two different things. He also said, come to confess your sins. He said that to Tony Stark. He also said this, which I was going to show you a video, but I won't because of copyright issues. So, to set the scene, Ultron is sitting in a church in this throne-like chair, and so he says this this church is in the exact center of the city. The elders decreed it so that everyone could be equally close to God. I like that, the geometry. The way he said it, though, this really hints at him very subtly calling himself God here. Another thing he said is, on this rock I will build my church. So you can just see throughout the entire movie, he's blaspheming God. He's trying to call himself God. So, there's a parallel between Ultron and God, is kind of what they were doing there. And, they're painting a false representation of God. They're making him look like a bad guy. They're making him look super judgy, but they're also doing everything they can to just make him look unloving. And then Ultron, throughout this whole thing, tosses around the word imperfection, like the word sin, They cast God in a bad light throughout this entire movie. And honestly, I think this reason right here is movies like this are one reason why people, like unbelievers, have such a misinterpretation of who God really is. Because they see stuff like this and then it really confuses the way they think. So another Marvel movie, Infinity War, is another example of the moral decline in our society. Thanos, the main villain in this one, he committed genocide. And he killed half the universe. And they kind of ended it by saying that, kind of making him look like the hero at the end. There's a lot wrong with that. Again, going back to Proverbs, 7 things God hates. The third one on the list is hands that shed innocent blood. It's very clear there that God is not okay with that. And because of all the lies and immorality in television, children are impacted. Substantial brainwashing warps the minds of children. Here is a quote by kidshealth.org. The average American child will witness 200,000 violent acts on television by age 18. Many violent acts are caused by the good guys whom kids are taught to admire. This can lead to confusion when kids try to understand the difference between right and wrong. And the same article continues, young kids are particularly frightened by scary and violent images. Simply telling kids that those images aren't real won't make them feel better because they can't yet tell the difference between fantasy and reality. So that causes a lot of behavioral issues. Many children have behavioral consequences from watching too much TV, especially when it's violent. They're more aggressive, they're more fearful. A lot of times, they don't have as much empathy for people who are injured. And many children are brainwashed. They copy poor morals they see on TV. They adopt a moral mentality, and that doesn't leave them when they become an adult, unless unless God changes their life around. So brainwashing children is all part of the larger plan. Behind the scenes, people push for control by removing morals from our society. And I think there are 3 stages to that. First of all, they question rights and wrongs. So they're kind of like, they leave them with the mentality of you can do whatever you want, you can be whoever you want. And so they kind of make you question right and wrong, because then they're kind of like, well, if you have this desire, then is it really wrong? And that's kind of the mentality that leads down. And so the second stage is kind of like they ignore sin and they become desensitized to it. You know, they think people are ultimately good, but they trip up sometimes, so they kind of just, is it really that bad? You know, it's kind of that mentality. And then they go to the third stage. They start promoting sin. So they stand behind immoral causes. You know, they follow their heart. You know. And I think that these three stages are shown in the way that they attack each age group, at least the way it was. So for younger ages, they make them question right and wrong. And then for kids, they kind of make them ignore sin and they become desensitized to sin. And then for teenagers and up, they kind of teach them to promote sin. But today in our society, I think it's gone further than that. I think that they actually teach it in all categories now, all three stages. So even in the younger categories, it may not be as evident, but it's still there. And screenwriters and all the people above them, all the people working toward these movies and shows, they're controlling people. They're controlling people politically, socially, emotionally, morally, and they're manipulating people's desires. And this is why society has become so morally corrupt. You know, and I was definitely deceived by watching a lot of television. You know, I went through a phase where I lived in the world and I was not close to God. I did not read my Bible and pray regularly. You know, I was not in a good place spiritually. But all this to say, be careful what you put in your mind because we are affected whether we realize it or not.
Cool. All right, thank you, Eliana. Question. Did you hear a process? Or an explanation. She was doing an explanation. It wasn't a process, 1, 2, 3, it was a causal analysis. Did she use, let me ask a question because I was wondering as I get to the end, did she use the word pitfalls throughout the sermon at any points? Did you hear that word? Or did you hear the word technology? Because she definitely was talking about technology. That was in her title.
I think she used the word decline more often.
Decline, yeah. Detail. As we're going through preparing a talk, the words that we use, we put out in front of the people, whether it's in a title, but then I want to emphasize that with my wording somewhere. If I'm going to use the wording of the title, it's just going to help the memory and the connection and the flow of your thought. So I thought you could use the word pitfall with a lot more effectiveness in the talk, as well as remind us. So the first pitfall, the second pitfall, the third pitfall of these technological immersions, that just helps the audience a little bit better. But clear topic, clear structure, that would have brought a little bit more. Good conclusion. I like the way she brought in that personal element. I was caught in it, didn't help, and it was a scriptural focus for us as Christians on this issue. Question, comment, anybody?
It seemed like she learned from her last talk too, because or like her and whoever was videotaping her helped out, because the last one, they struggle with the screen not really being able to be seen, but this time I think that they kept to making sure that it was focused.
Good.
And forth.
Right there, Eliana, you and your assistant, somebody who was maybe helping with the background there. If you were doing that all alone, you did well, is what we're saying. Good stuff. That's a different context for us to have to do a talk. Well, let's take a break, and then we'll talk about talk number 7. There's a few more, but we need to introduce talk 7. Take a 5-minute break.
staying here because I need to work over the summer, and when I finally get a job at some point here soon, hopefully, I figured it would just be easier just to keep it and then live in Philly Hall or something like that. But I'm probably gonna go back to Colorado and live at my aunt's house and find a job in the Denver area for the summer. I don't know. It just seems like that'll make sense because God gave me the opportunity to get in contact with my other side of the family that I haven't been in contact with since I was 3, and I just started that relationship like right when I had to move here, and they're in Colorado. And so moving with them over the summer will allow me to build that relationship more. I'll be able to live for free. I'll be able to be near a job. Because otherwise, at my parents, I live in a tiny town. I wouldn't have anywhere to work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Bummer part of it is that the ministry that I'm just now getting involved with, if I were to stay here over the summer, I would have been able to stay connected with that and but if I go to Colorado, obviously I won't be able to do that.
Do you know if Everly's staying?
I don't actually. We haven't talked about it.
She's probably not.
Huh?
She's probably not.